Hello and welcome to the new series of Drishti IAS. I am Pooja Dwivedi, and in this segment we are going to discuss about India ratifying the Kigali Amendment to Montreal Protocol. This topic is important from the perspective of prelims and also from the perspective of GS mains paper. So let's begin with the topics of discussion that we are going to look at. These are the topics we are going to discuss step by step, beginning with the news. So like in the recent times, the USA and China, India has also ratified the Kigali Amendment to Montreal Protocol. There are many steps when a treaty has to come into force, from signing to ratifying. We are going to discuss it all. And USA and China, this is a huge boost towards the climate change when they ratified this treaty, because USA and China are the largest consumers of hydrofluorocarbons, a potent global warming gas. Let's look at the various segments of it. So under this ratification, first I told you that whenever a treaty has to come into force, it passes through many processes. First is signing of the treaty. After negotiation, we move on to signing of the treaty, right? Signing is nothing but an intent to comply. Whatever negotiations will take place between the different parties, and whenever they reach a certain set of details which they have an intent to comply with, then they will sign the treaty. But after that, the treaty doesn't come into force after just signing. We need ratification. Now, this is the entire catch. Many of you must be hearing that India has signed this treaty, but it has not ratified it yet. So, ratification is basically to form an act in the national terms that will make that treaty enforceable in the nation. That means the Parliament of India will formulate a law, not even Parliament, the Executive or the Parliament of India will form a certain set of acts or laws which will make that signing of the treaty to come into practice. That is the basic difference. And India has said that there will be a national strategy to phase down the hydrofluorocarbons. This to be chalked by, this plan will be coming into our eyes, in front of our eyes by 2023. It will have certain set of infrastructure as well, and skilled and unskilled employment both will be generated. And of course, whenever we have to phase down a certain set of gases, for example, hydrofluorocarbons, which are 19 set of gases which are extensively used in the cooling industry, in the foaming industry, and in many other, as a coolant and refrigerant and many other industry. Now this has to be substituted, some proper other gases or other elements need to come into practice so that there will not be a gap and there will not be a void which is left by the phasing out of HFC, that is hydrofluorocarbons. So of course, development has to take place in research and development. So that is the need, the innovation part. Okay, let's move forward and talk about the ozone. Ozone means O3 in simple terms, and this can be said as good or bad. Good ozone is the ozone that exists in the stratosphere, right? And bad ozone is the ozone that is there in the troposphere. And whenever the exam will ask you, where does the ozone layer exist? It is stratosphere. Always keep in mind. And ozone in the stratosphere is good because it protects the earth from harmful UV rays, ultraviolet rays. Ozone in the troposphere is bad because it is actually a pollutant. It is the main cause of urban smog. So keep that in mind. Urban smog is caused by ozone as a pollutant in troposphere. Okay, but naturally it occurs in the stratosphere. So it protects the earth from the harmful layers of the harmful UV rays of the sun. And the problem which was there with the ozone layer, that it started getting depleted. We will discuss about all that. But first, let's see the significance of it. Now, as I have already discussed the first one, so we shall move forward. Plants cannot live and grow in heavy ultraviolet rays because it damages many crops, such as the crops related to soya bean, or any other crops which actually get harmed by the UV rays. Of course, it will be a deterioration in the agriculture, especially from the perspective of India, and also the planktons which are in the chain of aquatic system, that also has a problem by the UV rays, because they can't make food. When they can't make food, the entire food chain of the aquatic system will get disrupted. These are already under stress according to certain studies. Also, humans would be more susceptible to skin cancer, cataracts, and impaired immune system. Melanoma, which is the most severe form of skin cancer, it has doubled if we talk about from the year 1990s. So you can imagine the level of depletion that has taken place. Moving forward, if we talk about the deterioration of the ozone layer, the deterioration of the ozone layer was actually acknowledged in the year 1985 by the Vienna Convention on the protection of ozone layer. So there was a huge hole that was being seen, and it was acknowledged in the Vienna Convention that we need to protect the ozone layer because of this very reason, the very reason that it will be a threat to the human beings. And what happens actually? How do the ozone gets depleted in the first place? By many global warming potent gases such as chlorofluorocarbons, hydrofluorocarbons, and other gases such as carbon tetrachloride. We also have methyl bromide, methyl chloroforms, halons. So many gases are there which are potent in nature to harm our ozone layer. So what happens? According to scientists, it is being said that hydrofluorocarbons, what happens when they react with the ozone? It is the ultraviolet rays are able to break down the hydrochlorofluorocarbons and chlorofluorocarbons into the different gases of chlorine and bromine, like that. If we talk about methyl bromide also, it gets broken down into bromide. So like that, what happens? One chlorine atom, okay, what will happen with that one chlorine atom? It can harm about 1 lakh ozone molecules, and because of that the hole appears. And moving on to the ozone hole, whenever the ozone hole will appear, the ultraviolet rays will be able to bypass and breach the protective layer around the earth of ozone. That will cause a problem in many forms, like I have already discussed the harmful effects. So moving on to the whole of Antarctic. A UN study was conducted in the year 2018, and it was showing positive results with respect to the Montreal Protocol. That was, the ozone layer had been recovering itself at a rate of 1 to 3%. So, as you can see, there has been a difference in the width and expanse of ozone layer when we compare both of these years, 2018 and 19. So, of course, it is being seen in a positive direction that if proper governing of the environment is interacting with the scientific principles, and whenever that happens, it is a positive step for particular other treaties such as Paris Agreement. If everybody will understand the need of the hour, that means the IPCC has already said that the world global temperature has already grown up to the limit of 1.1 degrees Celsius at an average. So we can understand that when we can achieve such a huge target of shrinking the Antarctic ozone depletion through Montreal Protocol, why not work with the same passion towards Paris Agreement? Moving on, let's talk about the Montreal Protocol. I have already told you that it was in the year 1985 that it was acknowledged that we need to protect our ozone layer. And then in the year 1987 comes the Montreal Protocol. Now on what? Montreal Protocol it's a convention which relates to the substances that deplete the ozone layer. There was an acknowledgement in 1985 and then there was an acknowledgement about the substances in 1987 and it was adopted in 1987 and then in 1989 it came into force, okay, like this. So what does it do? It regulates the production and consumption of nearly 100 man-made chemicals referred to as ozone depleting substances. I have already discussed with you what are these. These are the different gases which I mentioned earlier. And it was adopted on 15 September 1987 and it is the only UN treaty that has ever been ratified by every country on earth, that is all the 198 UN members. And all parties have specific responsibilities related to the phasing out of the different groups of ODS. They have common but differentiated responsibility. And then in the year 2016, the Kigali Amendment came into being. We will discuss about that as well. So it controls many other things are under it, like controlling the ozone depleting substances trade. How should trade with respect to such gases should take place? And annual reporting of data should also be there. The data set should be there so that policy can be made. And national licensing system should also be put in place to control the ODS imports and exports and other matters. So these are the broad parameters on which Montreal Protocol works on. And developing and developed countries, I have already discussed that, have equal but differentiated responsibility. They have equal responsibility, but the process through which they will achieve those responsibility will be different because of course there is a huge gap between the developed and the developing countries. And both groups of countries have binding, they have their own binding and their own time targeted and measurable commitments. And the meeting of the parties is the governing body, okay? And if we talk about the multilateral fund which administers the financial system of Montreal Protocol, it is jointly overlooked by UN Environment Program, United Nations Development Program, UN Industrial Development Organization and the World Bank, as well as bilateral agencies of non-Article 5 countries. And these are the various sustainable development goals which are affected by the Montreal Protocol. Okay, what are these? No poverty, zero hunger because it will take care of the agriculture sector if we protect our ozone layer, no harmful UV rays, good health and well-being, of course, the health facets I have already discussed with you, gender equality, decent work and economic growth. So these are all bound in a chain. When one sector is going to be affected in a positive manner, every other sector will be affected, okay, and impacted. So Kigali Amendment, this is the 8th amendment. So you have to understand that since the year 1987, many amendments took place in order to formulate policies for the better achievement of targets. So Kigali Amendment was the 8th amendment in the year 2016 and it is legally binding, and it also has many other facets such as non-compliance measure as well, punitive measures. And 28th meeting of parties, the governing body that met, it happened then only, and 197 member countries, these signed the agreement to amend the Montreal Protocol. Why is it called the Kigali Agreement? Because it was signed in Kigali and the capital of Rwanda it is, and I have already discussed with you the date. The signing countries are expected to decrease the manufacture and usage of hydrochlorofluorocarbons by about 80 to 85% from their baseline until 2045. We will also look at different groupings of country. So one thing we must understand that Kigali Agreement deals with the hydrofluorocarbons, and before that Montreal Protocol talked about the phasing out of chlorofluorocarbons and hydrochlorofluorocarbons. They are very potent. If we talk about chlorofluorocarbons, 12. This is so potent that this can last in our environment for 100 years into our atmosphere, and they have very good and very strong global warming potential, much stronger than carbon dioxide. And India has also phased out hydrochlorofluorocarbon 141. We have succeeded here as well, which is used in the foaming industry. So, as you can see, these are some positive developments. Moving on, let's talk about more. This will curb global warming. By arresting global average, temperature rise to 0.5 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. One more thing, it is estimated that if we completely phase out the hydrofluorocarbons by 2050, there will be a curb, there will be a decrement in the rise of the temperature by 0.5 degrees Celsius. So you can see this could work. Also, the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer entered into force on 1st January 2019, following ratification by the required number of countries. And it has been said by the agency, the Energy Resource TERI, the Energy Resource Institution, and also Natural Resources Authority of the US, that 122 countries have already ratified the treaty by the end of July of this year. Okay, so 122 countries have already ratified the treaty. Now, US, China and India have also done that. And to phase down the hydrofluorocarbons is the main aim by reducing the manufacturing and consumption. That means we need more innovation. Moving on, if we talk about the groupings, this agreement has divided the countries into different groups, because as I told you, there is a difference between developing and developed countries. So the first group is led by the developed countries like the US and the European Union. They have to curb down their hydrofluorocarbons by 2019 and reduce the level to 15% of 2012 level by the year 2036. And the second group, which consists of China, Brazil and some African countries, developing countries, that will start the phase down by 2024 and decrease it to 20% of 2021 by the year 2045. So there is a difference now. And the third group, in which India is also placed along with other countries like Pakistan, Iran, Saudi Arabia. Now they have to phase down by 2028 and reduce the level to 15% of 24 to 26 level by the year 2047. So here again, equal but differentiated responsibilities. Now there are certain challenges to the amendment of the Kigali, to the signing of the Kigali Amendment and ratifying of the Kigali Amendment for India. First, because India wants to become an Atmanirbhar Bharat and we also have Make in India mission. So what will happen to them if we do not have proper innovation? And as I told you that hydrofluorocarbons, these are extensively used in many industry. What will happen to the manufacture of those in the short period of time? First challenge is that. Second, financial implications of the Kigali Amendment. Huge infrastructural needs are there for investment and research and development, because in order to develop a proper, sustainable and substitutable gas, we need proper innovation and research and development in that field. So that is going to weigh heavy on India's financial burden, especially in the COVID era. Then what will happen, because there will be an increase of the global temperatures in the next 10 to 20 years, more demand will be there for the cooling appliances by the general populace. The general populace is not very mindful of the environmental implications of such cooling appliances. They will of course just demand until and unless awareness is there. So what will happen with that? The manufacturing industries will be of course, if they will not get the proper cooling agent and not a sustainable substitute gas of it, what will happen? That is also a challenge. And because of the innovation and research and development, patents should also be costing a lot. Patent rights, how to protect them, that is also another challenge. Now, the way forward is we need to invest in renewable energy sources, first of all, in order to understand, to supplement the decreasing in the hydrofluorocarbons, and of course, meeting the demands of the Paris Agreement with investing hugely in renewable energy, and build infrastructure as well for the proper infrastructure. Here not only means brick and mortar infrastructure, but digital infrastructure as well in terms of innovation and research and development. More and more subsidies and more incentives should be given to startups which deal with such research and development in the field of providing substitute and sustainable gas instead of hydrofluorocarbons. Also strengthening the IPR system, how to preserve the patents, how to preserve any innovation through the help of patents across, not only in India, but across the globe. That is also a way forward. And generate awareness to the general populace about the ill impacts of cooling appliances and incentivize the industries in order to have the new cooling appliances which are sustainable in nature to be sold at a lower rate, or even if not lower, then at par. Okay, so these are the way forward. Let's look at our mains question. Discuss in detail the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol. Also critically analyze the impacts of the ratification of Kigali Amendment by India on its mission to make in India an Atmanirbhar Bharat. So that's it for today. Tomorrow we shall meet again with another segment. Until then, stay updated and thank you so much for watching.